Okay. You ready?
4.
Supposedly, you already know what our next meals are going to be.
I do.
So this is the chance to
the
prove
test?
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Show us
So-
what you got.
Like show you?
Show us.
Okay. Well, Monday we do mac and cheese because that's our date night.
Okay.
So Monday's kind of a cheater night, but the kids have pizza either or mac and cheese when the
Okay.
babysitter comes. So I've got Tuesday's taco night, and there's 4 taco meat frozen in there.
Okay.
So that's for the next 4 Tuesdays. And then the kids can make their own tacos because I just put out the taco meat and beans and cheese and stuff that's already in the fridge. And like we buy the prepackaged
Okay.
kind. Wednesday is burgers. So these are the ground beef for burgers. And I do, we're making it like a slider type thing.
Okay.
So the meat's already cooked. It just goes on some buns and then top it with
Yeah, I
cheese
believe you.
and put it in the oven.
I'm not making this stuff up.
I'm not making it up. Thursday is our ballet night, so we usually do leftovers on Thursday, or make sandwiches because we have to leave early. Friday is stir fry or pad thai, and that's the meat for that down there. It's all cut up and it marinates, so I take it out overnight, it marinates, and cook it over some noodles.
So you weren't lying. You actually
I'm
do
not
this
lying.
stuff.
I really do it.
And welcome back to Crazy Blessed Adventures, where the links are in the notes, the fights are in the recordings, and the kids are hopefully still in bed. And today we're talking about something I didn't even know was a thing, but apparently people search for it in real life.
Freezer meals.
Freezer meals,
Freezer meals.
freezer cooking.
Freezer cooking, bulk cooking, batch cooking. It goes by a lot of names. Once a month meals.
I have
Yeah.
absolutely nothing to add to this
Yeah,
conversation.
there's whole websites dedicated to this.
So,
Yeah,
do you feel like everyone who's listening to this right now already knows what this is?
Probably. Or
Okay.
at least has some general idea, maybe has tried it before, or maybe has never tried it before but is interested, or if you're just stuck with meal planning in general, yeah.
How is this
So-
different than just cooking
Well-
too much food?
Well, how we got started doing it was that we couldn't cook food. We were not able to use the kitchen a large part of the time.
Wait, what? When did this start?
This is what I used to do when you had your studio in the house, and I wasn't able to cook during dinner time because we had clients coming in and out of the house all the time. So this was how I got out of we're having frozen pizza for dinner every night because I can't cook Sunday through Friday.
Because I taught lessons in our house
Yeah.
from noon until like 8 or 9
Yeah.
every
Every day.
day.
Mm-hmm.
And you weren't allowed to be around or
Well, just
making
cooking
noise.
in the kitchen right next to,
Yeah, it's
you
weird.
know, especially depending on smells.
It's
or
not weird.
Whatever.
Piano teachers suck, and they teach inside their house all the time, and they do weird in your house stuff
Right.
that I think would be weird if I was there for a lesson.
But
No,
having
that's-
somebody cooking next to it.
That's
is
the
just
opposite
how
of the
they-
truth.
Yeah.
When I go to my piano teacher, his whole family is there, and they're just living their life, and she's cooking, and the kids are doing their homework. That's not weird to me. Why did I think it was weird?
Well, at the time, you were starting a brand new business.
That's true,
We
and I
wanted
was
to build a lot of credibility.
terrified.
We were trying to build a client base. So there was a lot of like wanting to establish professionality, all that kind of stuff. So
Professionality.
Professional.
Not using the word professionality is one of the keys.
professionalism.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
okay,
probably
the
a
one.
thing
Okay, yeah.
because we're professionalities. Okay.
Okay. So anyway, I found this website called Once a Month Meals, and they did that. They planned out a whole month's worth of meals for you. They gave you the shopping list and the to-do list and instructions and printable labels for your Ziploc bags, and it was all very like, pay $7 a month or whatever for the membership, and it's all done for you. You just have to do the cooking, but all the planning part of it's done for you. And so one day a month, cook everything, and that way, as soon as you're done working, put it in the oven and we can eat.
So once
And
again,
we're not eating frozen pizza or Taco Bell every night.
help me understand how this is different from just cooking way too much and
Well,
having leftovers all the time.
I know that there are people who just do that, but the idea is that you plan out a whole bunch of meals, and the way I do it, at least, is I plan out a bunch of meals and I know what days of the week we're going to serve them. It's a little bit more strategic for me. That way I know, like, on the days that we maybe have soccer and we're not coming home until right before dinner time, that's a good crock pot day. And so the prep is already done for that thing. I just put it in the crock pot before we leave, and then when we come home, dinner is ready. The days that we're not out, I can maybe do something that's going to take a little bit more time, but
So, yeah, representing all the people who are listening, I think that Jamin should just shut up and you should go ahead and go talk about your thing. Everybody else is on the same page except for me. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
So anyway, bulk cooking too has its pros because it's faster to do a whole bunch of things all at once, a whole bunch of something all at once. And it's cheaper to do a whole bunch of something all at once, being able to shop in bulk. And then the decision being made already for you, sometimes the decision of what we're having for dinner is kind of the hardest part. What do we have? What can I make with what we have? What do I have energy to make? So if I know the menu's already planned out and I just have to grab that thing out of the freezer and make whatever side goes with it, and it's going to take less than 15 minutes. And there's at that point of the day, I've already made 1,000 different decisions and my brain is tired. And so if there's zero decision making required and I can just kind of go on auto, it's a lot more likely to happen than if I have to come up with something on the fly every single day at 6 o'clock. So there's just a lot of reasons that even now that I don't have you being out of the whole studio scenario where I can't use the kitchen like I did before, I'm totally sold on it and won't.
So mean. Sorry.
It was a different season in our lives. So I started by using once a month meals. Like I said, it's a whole website, plans it all out for you. And I liked that for a long time, especially while I was learning about freezer cooking, and some things freeze well, some things don't really freeze well. Knowing the difference between those two and all that, it made a really big difference.
So that's the one that if I was in charge, I would just cook way too much, and then we'd have to eat it right away because it doesn't freeze well.
Yeah, there are certain things you just
okay.
if you put it in the freezer and come out, it's not coming out the same.
Right.
So then nobody's gonna want to eat it.
Like what? What's the worst possible thing to freeze?
A lot of pastas and rice don't really come out the same, and a lot of veggies. Veggies can be frozen. Obviously, the grocery store freezes veggies, but it's tricky to do unless you know how to do it right or have the time to do it right. Then it's just it's hard to do it and have it not come out like a soggy, mushy.
Okay. So go on.
That nobody else wants to eat.
Tell us the right thing.
So the only downsides to the pre-made menus were I was finding a lot of them, it's all recipes we haven't made before, because they have this, they're wanting to keep things fresh, so they have this great database of new recipes and it's changing all the time. But when you're cooking for small children, they're not really into new and different. And then when you make 4 of something and you try the first one and they taste it for the first time, you go, I don't like that, but you have 3 more in the freezer, and sorry guys, this is every Tuesday for the next month. And then that's just kind of a bummer to know that that's going to be the case. So that was kind of one downside. And then a lot of the ones that are like the pre-made menus, the recipes are really complex, and I think that they're designed in mind for you're planning your 8 hours of cooking day and your once a month cooking, and you don't and I think they're planning it without distractions and interruptions, but that's just not the reality that I live in. I don't actually have 8 interrupted hours to do the meals prep, and so I would I'd print out these lists of the 12 steps to get through the bulk cooking, and I'd get to step 2 and it's 10 p.m., and I'm like, that is just not happening. And I'd spend, the next 5 days trying to get the last few pieces put in the freezer. So I came to realize I was substituting a lot of recipes for more simple ones or things I knew I would like. And at some point went, okay, I think I know enough to just do this all on my own. So I've done different ways. I know that when it's called once a month meals, and so a lot of people do it once a month. For a while, I was doing every 12 weeks, which was really great because 12 weeks is a long time.
Whoa.
So I would plan out 3 different menus, and then I would make each one of them 4 times. And so the first 3 weeks of the cycle, I was actually doing all the bulk cooking. But then the next 9 weeks of the cycle, I didn't have to do anything at all. That was really awesome.
I think it's notable, at least from my perspective, that I had no idea that any of this was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So you were good. This all worked well enough that I had no idea that there was 9 weeks where you were cheating.
Right.
And
Well, yeah. Yeah. No, the weeks that I would have to do the actual cooking, obviously that would be a lot more time consuming to make, 4 of this stir fry, all the chopping and all that stuff.
I
But
feel like everyone in the audience is going to hate me for saying that you were cheating because obviously you were doing other things.
I was doing
during
other
the
things.
Time.
Yeah. No, and that there's a reason why I was cheating because dinner time prep especially I'm sure it's like this in all the houses. It's a really tough time of day. The baby's cranky and tired, and the kids, a lot of times we have evening activities or extracurricular stuff, and so they're either tired coming home from something or we're trying to rush to something, and people are just, we're not as fresh as in the morning, and that time of day, factoring in baths and all that stuff, it just ends up being a challenging time of day. So having, dinner prep take 15 minutes or less, I'd like to cheat in that area as much as possible.
How stressful was that 3 weeks when you were doing 12 weeks worth of cooking?
A lot of times I would do it after bedtime. Like I would maybe not actually do the meals on that menu day, but like I would do something else on that day, and then after the kids went to bed, I would do the 4.
Okay.
Or it kind of just would depend on what the meal was and what the prep was required. Certain things, making 4 of it is not actually as long as making 1 of it. Like your ground beef, for example, I can make a big pot of it in almost the same amount of time as I can make 1 pound of it. And so depending on what it is, I could either do it that same day or I would do it in the evening after the kids were in bed and then just pack it up and know that it was there for the other times.
Did this impact our grocery budget at all then?
Well,
That you
yeah,
had to-
definitely. I mean, we would definitely be buying more meat. That's the big thing. You're buying the meat in bulk. And even now, we do it on a 6-week cycle, not a 12-week cycle. So every 6 weeks, we're buying a lot more meat than other stuff. But there are other things that are that way. I mean, when you're bulk buying anyway, we do all of our shopping at Costco because we just eat that much groceries. There are things that you run out of, not every week. Like we don't have to buy diapers every time, but the time we do have to buy diapers, that's an extra $40. And so I think it kind of fluctuated. I don't think that it was ever like so significantly more than the other times. It kind of all balanced out.
I didn't
with the
notice
other
it.
things that we had to stock up on. So
Okay.
yeah. So like I said, now we do every 6-week cycle, which matches our school weeks. We do 6 weeks on, 1 week off with our school schedule. So the off week, the 7th week, I guess, is when I do the batch cooking. So it's actually
Your homeschool schedule.
our homeschool.
Right.
Our homeschool schedule. So we homeschool for 6 weeks on, 1 week off. So I guess it's actually a 7-week.
Just like Jesus
Yeah.
would want it.
What I do is I plan 6 weeks of meals. There are regularly times that we maybe don't eat that meal because we came home late or we went out and got fast food that night or whatever. And so I keep the leftover ones for the 7th week.
Is the 6 weeks on, 1 week off actually a religious thing?
Some people call it Sabbath schooling, but I think that's just because of the
Okay. I have a
the
feeling
nature of
someone
it.
out there is making a really strong case that actually is how Jesus would want you to homeschool your kids.
maybe. I've not ever run into any. All of the people that I have run across that do it that way, it's more of like an avoid burnout kind of thing.
Sure.
But yeah,
That's the
could
same
be.
thing they say about the Sabbath, though, too, right? Is it just an
Sure.
avoiding burnout thing?
Yeah, maybe.
That Jesus wants you to do.
I don't know. I've never heard it said that way, but I suppose there's probably somebody out there. So I have one menu that I use for 6 weeks, which does mean we're eating the same menu every week for 6 weeks in a row. So I want to make sure that it's things that we are going to like. The menu is really the key thing in planning this, making it work, making the whole freezer cooking thing work. There are a few things that go into having a good menu. One is that I want to look for things that have similar ingredients or similar processes. So a lot of times, whatever meat I'm using in a meal, I'm also going to use that in another meal. It helps with the buying in bulk factor, and having the same kind of process kind of saves on time. So, for example, like I said, ground beef, if I can do a whole bunch of it and use half of it for one meal and half of it for another meal, then that's going to save me a lot of time. I'll, try to do 2 chicken things. And so then whatever chicken I'm cutting up, I'm just going to do a whole bunch of it all at once. I try to keep whatever meals are on the menu to be really minimal prep. And like I said, some of those pre-made menus have things that are great, but they're a lot more time consuming, and maybe we'll get to that someday, but at this season we aren't there. I want to be able to do all of the prep in one day at this point. So I try to consider what the different meals are, and I have some examples that I'll kind of go through in a little bit of like what things are really fast to prep and what things take a little bit more time. But I try to stick with like a whole bunch of the really fast ones, and then maybe just 1 or 2 of the more time consuming ones, like something like a soup or something like that I know that we'll enjoy, and I can fit one of them into the schedule, but I can't fit all 6 of them that way. So I just evaluate that as I'm planning what things I can fit in here that are going to be, things I can do all in one day.
You are amazing. Yes. Okay. I had no idea any of this was going on.
It's going on.
Yes, apparently.
Yeah.
Okay. And you are also able to birth babies.
I've done that too. Wow.
And feed them. You are an amazing mechanism over there.
Well, thanks. I've never been called a mechanism, but okay.
Except in our vows.
Anyway, another factor in considering the menu is knowing what day of the week I'm going to serve something. Like I said before, a crock pot meal on a day we're coming home right before dinner, as opposed to the meals that I know might take a little bit more time to get on the table. I want to make sure that that's going to be a day of the week that we're not out. So knowing like what our weekly schedule typically holds is really a good factor in that. So I really want to look at all that stuff when I'm planning. I pretty much always stick to meals that I've made before at this point. At different seasons, I've had like an experiment day, and sometimes too, even like a Saturday, I might try out a new recipe, because it takes a while to build up a repertoire of recipes that you're going to like and that are going to freeze well. And so,
but you're giving everybody a repertoire, right? Tell me you're giving.
Yeah, totally. Well, I can give you a repertoire of what I know we like and what I know freeze well, but that might not be what your family likes and freezes well. So some ways that I kind of look for new recipes if I'm feeling like we're getting tired of what we've been using for a while is I might like say, what's a recipe that I know that we like that I've never tried to freeze before, and then I can go on Pinterest and look for a freezer version of that. There's enough people doing this now that somebody probably has one and they've tried it before, so they know that the strategy they're using is going to work well for the freezer. Or I might just consider, what are some steps that I can do ahead? Maybe I can't freeze the whole thing, but I can eliminate some of the steps so that putting it on the table takes maybe half the time as it would have before. So like I have a chicken noodle soup recipe that I really love. But like I said, pasta doesn't always freeze great. So if I make a giant pot of it and freeze half, the second half's going to come out kind of mushy. And so I try to avoid doing that. And sometimes sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. But I try to avoid doing it that way. So maybe what I can do is I can do the broth and I can do the chicken and do the veggies and freeze that part of it and then pull it out and add the pasta the day that I serve it. Heat it up, boiling, add the pasta, and then serve it.
Like a hamburger helper thing.
Yeah, sort of like that. So I'm eliminating a good chunk of the steps. Maybe I don't have the whole thing frozen, but cool. I'm making it faster. So anyway, experimenting with meals that I know that we like and deciding how I can either make that faster, or maybe just if you think you want to freeze it and you think you know how to freeze it, try just one of it and freeze it and then thaw it out and see if it actually did freeze well, rather than doing a large batch of it and then ending up with, oh, it didn't freeze well, but we have 3 more in the freezer. So some of the things that I know that we really like and that freeze well, and I kind of have these in my mind based on the things that are going to be the highest prep work versus the lowest prep work, or the highest amount of work the day of, or the lowest amount. Soups and casseroles are going to be the most work on prep day, but they're going to be the least work to get to the table, because it's pretty much already done. The exception to that is if it's like I'm adding in a pasta or I'm adding in a rice, that's an additional step I'm going to have to do that day. But if it doesn't have that in it, then it's already completely done and I'm just reheating. So those are going to be the things that are fastest to get to the table, but easiest or most work on prep day. Chili is really easy because that doesn't have pasta in it at all. Chicken noodle soup without the noodles, or chicken and rice soup. There's a couple great Thai soup recipes that you can serve over rice, but pop the rice in the rice cooker and the soup's all done. I'm just heating up that part. Or like curry is another really good one. So stuff like that, where those are the ones that are going to be the most work for me to do that day when I'm prepping, but I know those are going to be the great go-to ones on the days that I really only have time just for heating. One of the couple of tips with soup and with casserole, if you have a soup that's got a really heavy amount of broth, it's and for me, freezer space is always at a premium, so freezing something that's a large amount of broth is going to be really hard. So I will do only half of the amount of the broth, and then I'll freeze that, and then I'll add the other half of the amount of the broth when I'm reheating it, just because I don't have space to freeze like the large amount. So that's one way that I kind of cut down on the space. And then casseroles too, unless it's something that's layered like a lasagna or something like that, I'll store those in a Ziploc bag rather than storing them in a Gladware container, because Gladware or any of those like kind of Rubbermaid things, those are going to take up a ton more space in the freezer. But the freezer bags, you can zip them and fold them, and they stack and freeze a lot easier. And it also saves a lot more space when everything in the freezer is the same shape and size. So I try to do everything in Ziploc rather than trying to do a whole bunch of different kinds of containers, just because I don't have a lot of space. So that's one thing that kind of helps with those two types of meals. I'll do a lot of things that are like a seasoned meat that's already cooked, like meat for tacos or meat for burgers. I have some like burger slider type recipes where the meat's already cooked and I'm just putting it on top of buns and putting it in the oven. So that's just a really easy, throw it into the oven and it's already done. But the only prep that I have to do for it is just doing the meat, or like seasoned meat for topping a salad, or pre-make the meatballs or something like that. So that one's a little bit and not quite as much work to do for prep as the soups are, but it's also not as much work to put on the table as some of the other things are. And then some of the ones that are the easiest to prep are slow cooker meals are always a good go-to, because a lot of times whatever you have that's going into the slow cooker can pretty much be put into there straight from the freezer. Same thing with the oven. If I'm baking or roasting chicken, a lot of times that whatever it's already frozen, I don't even have to thaw it. I can just throw it straight into the slow cooker, straight into the oven. And so, throw the meat and the sauce all into the bag, zip it up, and you don't have to do anything to it before you put it in the freezer bag. So those ones are really easy to prep. I'll make sure that I have a couple of those on my menu so that kind of makes it all go faster. And the slow cooker recipes on, like, if you haven't found any before on Pinterest, just look up freezer slow cooking, and they'll just be hundreds. There's some people have really great ideas. So that one's just a matter of looking for something that looks like a recipe that your family would like. And then a lot of like marinade type stuff. So we like to do stir fries a lot of the time, or marinating chicken that is going to just go straight into the oven, or like kebabs or something like that. So you throw the chicken and the sauce into the bag, and then when you want to serve that one, letting it thaw overnight in the refrigerator means that the meat's sitting in the sauce all day, so it's marinating the whole time. So that way you get the long marinade on stuff that, sometimes marinating something for 3 hours before you serve it means you have to like be ahead of the game, But if it's, coming out of the freezer, then makes it a lot faster. So if I'm doing chicken or kebabs or something like that, then I will I'm losing my train of thought. You're making funny faces at me.
Nothing to add.
Okay.
So a piece of rope goes into a bar. And the bartender says, "We don't serve rope here." So he walks out, ties himself up, tussles his hair, and walks back in. And the bartender says, "Didn't I tell you we don't serve rope here?" He said, "I'm afraid not." That's as close to a contribution as I'm going to be able to get in this conversation.
You're funny.
No. I'm many things. That is not one of them.
So I have a link on the post for my Pinterest board where I started saving some of the meals that are our favorites for us in our household and things that I know that work really well. And as I find new things, I'm adding new things to that because I do try to freshen it up. But like I said, I kind of experiment before I do a whole bunch of them. A couple of things
Do you
that
get
are...
it? Because of afraid not?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got it. It was good.
That's my favorite thing right now with the kids.
Do you get it?
Do you get it? Do you get it? Because
Because
afraid,
afraid.
but not. Do you get it? Not.
Like a knot. It's like a knot. Yeah. It's really helpful to label Ziploc bags. And I know that sounds obvious, but I sometimes don't do it because I'm rushed and, I'm just going to throw it in the bag. And then they all look the same when they're in the freezer. So label the bags with what it is and what the steps are for reheating it, because the temperature of the oven or how long it's supposed to go or the fact that you're supposed to add in more broth before you cook it. I don't like to rely on my memory for those kind of things because I will forget.
And when the ink smudges, pasta looks just like placenta, and you don't want to mix the two up.
I do not have any placenta in my freezer.
You're doing great. Keep going.
So I know a lot of people who do freezer cooking do side dishes too. I don't right now. And I know that would probably save me more time and maybe at a different season. But again, the phase that we're in is trying to get all of the prep done in one day with, trying to get all the prep done in one day and trying to have all the meals be on the table within 15 minutes. So there's kind of a balance between those two. And at this point, where that balance leads me is that I don't do any of the side dishes on prep day. But what I do generally is try to stick to, like when I plan the menu, I try to plan out what side dishes are going to go with it. So I know that on taco night, we're always going to have this side, and on burger night, we're always going to have this side. So that way when I'm going grocery shopping, again, it eliminates the decision making for me, so I know what things I need to have on my list, what fresh produce I need to have, or we do a lot of like Costco bagged salads, or if I'm going to do steamed or roasted veggies, I try to buy the ones that are already the pre-washed and cut ones, and that eliminates the time factor for me when I'm trying to get dinner on the table. So I plan out the sides, but I don't at this point actually add in the sides. I do try to do a lot of menu or meals that include the vegetables already in them, like a stir fry or a soup or something like that, so I'm not having to like make a separate vegetable to go with it, and that kind of saves on some of the time too, and I'm making sure the kids are actually eating some vegetables in their day at some point, because that seems like an important thing. So having all of that stuff planned out is really helpful.
Whew.
I
Okay.
think that's all I got.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. No.
I'm impressed.
It's been many years of fine-tuning the process, and yeah, I'm sure we'll continue to make adjustments in other seasons.
So, best things that freeze well. I heard a lot of ground beef in there.
No, that was just my example one.
What's your
our-
favorite? Absolute favorite right now for the family?
I really like doing stir fry. That's super easy, and like I said, the marinade factor, it's been sitting in that for whatever long, it just makes the chicken really flavorful, or whatever I'm using. There's
We really need a good rice cooker. Our rice cooker is so
terrible.
sucky.
It is. Yeah. Half the time it doesn't cook the rice, and so then you have to restart it.
Yeah.
And
There are good
everybody's
rice cookers
eating
out there, I'm
stir fry
sure.
with no rice because it's not going to be done for an hour.
And they cost $17.
Right.
But
Yeah.
We have
Anyway.
not one.
There's like that pork saute recipe that I've done.
Oh my goodness, that's
like
my favorite.
the kebab thing.
Every
that
night.
one is so good.
Every night.
It's like a peanut pork kind of thing. It is really good.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a another like pork roast kind of carnitas thing that I've done before that's kind of spicy. So the kids don't love that one as much, but it's my favorite and I could eat it all day,
More
like
for
just
me.
straight off the pan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. so
And
that's
least
my favorite.
favorites. Worst freezer experience you had.
You know, the whole freezing vegetables thing, like a lot of the menus that I initially started using had frozen vegetables in them. And some people are probably doing that really successfully. I didn't ever figure it out and still haven't. So I prefer to add the vegetables in fresh that day, but we ended up with some really like soggy, yucky Brussels sprouts and asparagus that was just kind of mush. And yeah. And I have a hard time with this. Like I said, I do slow cooker things that I really do like. Chicken in the slow cooker, I have a really hard time with it not being dry. And I think that my slow cooker just runs really hot. I usually only run it for like 2 or 3 hours and it's done, which like slow cooker is usually
Right.
supposed to be like all day or 8 hours or whatever. Mine probably runs way too hot for that. So I end up with chicken that's like really dry. So I don't do a lot of slow cooker things just for that reason. I do other things in the slow cooker, but not chicken.
But
Yeah.
the aroma is wonderful.
That's
so
true.
my advice is do your freezer cooking and then do some chicken meal that you know is not going to turn out well, especially if you're trying to have a baby. And you need to get things moving, just put in whatever you need for your slow
Something
cooker.
that smells awesome
Let
all
it
day.
dry out all day. Take out an entirely other meal. Serve that one up. Yeah, you'll be pregnant by March. And if
Good
you want to be
strategy.
pregnant by March, please like and subscribe. I don't know what you people are supposed to say.
So feel free to share your favorite freezer cooking meals.
That's
I'm
the
always
one.
looking for new ideas and trying to freshen things up and new tips. And like and follow us on our blog at crazyblessedadventures.com and on Instagram.